Hello, viewers. Welcome to this discussion where we will be looking at the aftermath of a military junta or military coup in Niger Republic. Following the July 26th coup that ousted President Mohamed Bazoum, there have been calls by some international community and the ECOWAS on the need for the military junta to restore democratically elected government in the country. And then recently, the Economic Community of West African State ECOWAS said it is reopening talks with the military junta with the hope of restoring the democracy in the country. This is what we will be discussing at this time. I am Umar Ahmad Abubakar, and we will be discussing this issue with Umar Farooq Ahmed. Umar, good morning and welcome.
Good morning, and thank you for having me on the program.
Okay, Umar, as I said in the background, following the July 26th coup, there are sanctions that are biting hard on the Nigerians now. And then the ECOWAS head of state indicated interest to reopen talks with the military junta. But from reports we are getting, the military junta, led by Abdurrahman Sani, is frustrating negotiations that will lead to the lifting of the sanctions. Do you think effort or the recent effort by the ECOWAS would lead to the lifting of these sanctions, as reports are indicating that the military is frustrating negotiations with ECOWAS?
Well, of course, there's so many evidence that the military is quite frustrating efforts by ECOWAS. First of all, you have a military government, and ECOWAS is pushing for it to restore back to democracy. And this government is already appointing military personnel into positions that are ordinarily supposed to be civilian positions. So that is an indication that, one, they are frustrating ECOWAS efforts, and secondly, it's like sending a message to ECOWAS that they don't actually have any intention of returning back to a civilian rule. So, and that's a part of the, the indication that they are actually frustrating these efforts, and they could be doing this maybe probably because they feel that maybe they also have a right to rule the country, as they mentioned earlier that they did this coup to save Niger, and at a point they also said they did to also save Nigeria after they declined meeting with the Nigerian envoys that President Bola Tinubu sent. These are all because Tinubu is the chairman of ECOWAS, and he sent an envoy from Nigeria, headed by former head of state General Absalam Abubakar, and they declined to meet with them, even though after that's a declination they gave their excuse that it was due to security reasons, but they still declined to meet with them. So these are all indications that they don't want to listen to what ECOWAS are proposing to them.
But why do you think they are not willing to accept or support this negotiation? Do you think they are still trying to hold on to power?
Yeah, of course, they're still trying to hold on to power, and they already have some international backing. If you look at the African hemisphere, Niger is a former colony, yeah, French colony. So they have France at their necks. And there's this global struggle for power between the European nations. You have America being the superpower with its allies of European countries. And on the other side, there's President Vladimir Putin also trying to establish his own dominance. And then there's that private military company headed by late Prigozhin. And some of their troops are already in Niger. So it's like they already have Russia's backing. So having a powerful country like Russia behind them could be part of the reasons. Another reason is because probably they want to negotiate better terms. ECOWAS is only giving them one condition, that restore a civilian government, but they're not sure what's going to follow, what will be the aftermath of that restoration. So they might try to be negotiating better terms of their exit, like immunity from prosecution, have some level of amnesty, some level of assurance that there will be no prosecution after the handover power, because of course military takeover is illegal and they could face severe prosecutions if that is done.
You talk of the presence of these Russian mercenaries, and then there are reports are suggesting that anywhere you see their presence, there will be crisis all over. Why do you think they are romancing these Wagner mercenaries? Because we know that France is helping a lot in fighting terrorists, even in Niger Republic, which after their exit, we are witnessing increase in attacks.
Yeah, it's a give and take. It's a give and take situation. You know, the way the Wagner forces operate is that, first of all, the government who invites them, of course, they're going to pay them a level of salary allowances. But it's not only that, they also take some different modes of payment. For instance, let's say if you're going to be paying them, let's say, let's just give a rough figure of, let's say, $10 million a year. So you can give them 5 million in cash and allow them to source for their 5 million. They also engage in illegal trade, like maybe drugs, slavery, and so it's just left for the government to turn a blind eye to their other atrocities. Most of their fighters are either ex-prisoners or people currently serving prison terms. Maybe you have a 10-year jail sentence. After 7 years of good behavior, you get you get released, and then you serve the remaining 3 years with Wagner.
So you are saying the presence of Wagner is of no good at all to the Nigerians and the country.
Yes, of course, because they are using ex-prisoners to fight, and you're asking that maybe why should they opt for that? So they have their own bad side too, of course. But this is a military government, so they feel that they can do whatever they want. Of course, if they're a civilian government, I doubt they would employ Wagner to their country.
And then let's look at these sanctions, because recently concerned ECOWAS parliamentarians calling ECOWAS to lift some of the sanctions, looking at how the sanctions are biting hard on Nigerians, and then some states in Nigeria bordering Niger Republic. And then there is this effort by ECOWAS now for negotiation that will lead to at least lifting of some of these sanctions. But as I said from reports, the military junta is frustrating the negotiations. Do you think they are even looking at the sufferings of the citizens?
Well, even if they do, we can only say that they said that they're looking at it, because if you weigh the sanctions that have been meted on the junta and the effects of those sanctions, they are severe enough to force them to relinquish power. Currently, the Minister of Education said that there is no guarantee they can pay salaries of their lecturers. This is all due to the sanctions. And if you take a look at some of the sanctions, let's just take a look at some of the sanctions. They have economic sanctions. There is a no, all commercial transactions have been suspended between ECOWAS states and Niger. There's a no-fly zone between ECOWAS, that's military no-fly zone, to and fro ECOWAS. There's a no commercial flight to and fro ECOWAS and Niger, between ECOWAS and the Niger Republic. They have no access to, like, all their assets in all ECOWAS central banks have been frozen. They also have no access to debt, and Niger needs that debt a lot because they were banking on that debt for developmental projects. And it has been restricted. They have no access to debt, so they can only use resources within their state, and also resources, their legally owned resources that are outside Niger have been frozen. So these are serious sanctions that should make them relinquish power. In fact, they just have to, if they really care for their people. Food prices have gone up. You have a bag of rice from about 12,500 sefa to 16,500. That's an increase of 4,000. People are queuing up to buy rice. You have the money, but you have to keep, because these sanctions have made the essential commodities much scarce and very expensive. So these are sanctions that should ordinarily make them to relinquish power, whether they
Do you
like
think
it or
with
not.
all this skyrocketing or increase in the prices of goods, because as you said, all the assets in ECOWAS member countries
Have been frozen.
frozen. Some during the protests or during the early time when the the military took over, we saw protests, how Nigerians were
They were
on the street
celebrating.
celebrating. But with all this hardship now, there are accusations that those protests were sponsored. Do you believe they were sponsored looking at the hardship the Nigerians are going through now?
Even if they were not sponsored, there's this change frenzy that people have whenever you have, okay, for instance, a civilian government was there, promised them all the goodies, there will be good roads, infrastructure, better economy, and that government didn't last up to 2 full years, and it got toppled. You can't perform magic in 2 years. Bazoum could have an excellent plan to make Niger on the path to goodies, and his government got toppled halfway. And then, so whenever you have that, there's a new government in town, there's always that celebration. So whether or not that was, whether or not that those protests or those rallies were funded, the basic fact now is that people are actually complaining. Nigerians are complaining of the current military junta. They're saying that they are not better than the civilian government that they overthrew. Prices are high, schools are shutting down, cooking gas, oil, rice, school fees, they are all skyrocketing. The little that you have are very expensive and they are so scarce. So whether or not those rallies were funded, the truth of the matter is that people are beginning to complain with this new government.
So with this happening in Niger, why do you think the ECOWAS should stand firm in restoring democratically elected government in Niger?
There's there's always whenever you have an incident like there's always a fallout. That's the consequences. You can call it, let's say, a contagious coup. You had Niger, Gambia, Mali, Burkina Faso. These are all West African states. They are all being coup is all just taking place rampantly. And let's look at Nigeria. Nigeria shares one too many borders with Niger. If there is a coup in Niger, there's every possibility that it could affect Nigeria. And sometimes these coups are not really like from the onset. They are not really like military driven. Sometimes you could have a civilian protest turn into like what happened in Sudan. It began from a civilian protest, and then the military saw that the country was breaking down, and then they took over. So if ECOWAS does not act now, there might not be an ECOWAS to stand on. Out of 16 member states, you have already lost like 6 states out of 16. You're now left with 10 member states. If you don't contain it, you might be down to 7, 5, and ECOWAS might just be like 2 or 3 countries later on. So that block is washing away. That's why they must stand firm to ensure that civilian rule is restored in all those member states. Currently, those some other states are beginning to push for an alliance. Those Sahel states that have had coups, they're beginning to push for an alliance to form, like to make a uniformity of their military governments. So like they are trying to make a force to fight ECOWAS. So ECOWAS needs to fight back to ensure that democracy is restored in all of them.
And then the ECOWAS, during its meeting at the weekend, also called for the unconditional release of President Bazoum. Do you think, since he is elected, he was elected by Nigerians, is there a need for him to be back in power and finish his own tenure?
Well, of course, if they're going to, that's the basic demand of ECOWAS, restore Bazoum. But, this is diplomacy. You might not always get what you want. For instance, you need 5 points. You can ask for 8. If you get 6, so be it. Or if you get 4, you just have to settle. So that's the bit of diplomacy. But what ECOWAS actually wants is for Niger to be ruled by a civilian president, not a military head of state. So their basic demand is for Bazoum to be restored back to power. If for one reason or the other, the military junta is able to convince the ECOWAS that, okay, they are going to return back to civilian rule, but it can't be Bazoum because of XYZ. Because the toppled Bazoum's government, one, they said they feared that he had too many opposition from ethnic groups. But what president doesn't have an opposition? Every president has an opposition. So that's democracy. So that's not much of a point. But what ECOWAS actually wants is just to restore sanity, to restore civilian government. But they're pushing for Bazoum to be back in power. But I believe that if the junta today says that we are ready to relinquish power by 12 p.m. noon, but it can't be Bazoum, we'll conduct a fresh election. I believe ECOWAS can come to terms with that.
Let's look at all the accusations on Bazoum by the military. Is there any difference between what the military was accusing Bazoum and now they have taken over the country? Economy, let's look at the economy, security, and the accusation of maybe ethnicity they level against Bazoum. Is the country better off now?
Yeah, no, I don't think you're saying that the country is better off because, like I mentioned earlier, they are facing an acute shortage of essential commodities, food, and other essential commodities. University fees are being hiked and people can't afford it. People have to queue up in the bank or ATMs to get their money. And in fact, there's a restriction now. There's a restriction on, enormous withdrawals of cash because the central bank needs that cash to govern the country. So economically, they're going down the slope. And the point you made mention about the ethnic accusations, well, when you have a country that has so many ethnic groups, of course, if a person from ethnic group A is in power, B, C, D, E, X, they are going to accuse him of favoring his own ethnic group. But what the accusation on Bazoum was that he was favoring the minorities, not only his own group. He was trying to share power equally amongst others. And those from the military junta felt that they were from the a majority ethnic tribe, and they couldn't allow that. So that's why. So it's not more like he was.
So it's a baseless accusation.
It's a business, like it's a selfish one, to be precise. Not even business. It's a selfish one. It's not like he was marginalizing some. No, he was eroding the narrative of marginalization. That was why. So politically they're down, economically the chips are down, and ethnically they have no point. They have no leg to stand on.
Okay, viewers, I think there's much we can take on this short discussion where we've been discussing on issue in Niger. As the ECO was saying, it is reopening talks with the military junta with the hope of restoring democracy in the country following the July 26 ouster by the military of a democratically elected president, Mohamed Bazoum. As I said, that's much we can take on this discussion. On behalf of Umar Farouk Ahmed, thank you very much for being part of our discussion.
Thank you so much.
I am Umar Ahmad Abubakar saying thanks for being there.